The sky turned dark suddenly, as if a storm had come without warning. Villagers looked up and gasped. A shadow, bigger than anything they had ever seen, moved across the sun. A deafening roar followed, shaking the trees and rattling the small houses in the village. People screamed and ran for cover. Mara, a young human veterinarian, was at the edge of the village, checking on a goat with a limp. She stopped and stared, her heart beating faster. Something enormous was falling from the sky. The ground shook as the dragon hit the forest clearing outside the village. Smoke rose from the impact, and branches snapped under the dragon's massive weight. A low, pained groan came from the creature, and its white scales, now streaked with dirt and blood, shimmered even in the dim light. Mara's breath caught. She had heard stories of dragons, of course, but no one in the village had ever seen one. Yet here it was, lying wounded, its wings bent and broken, its eyes filled with fear and pain. The villagers gathered at the edge of the forest, too afraid to go closer. They whispered to each other, unsure if they should help or run. Mara felt something inside her shift. She had treated many animals, some badly hurt, some near death. She had always felt a deep responsibility to help those who could not help themselves. But this was no ordinary animal. This was a dragon. She knew the danger. Dragons could kill with a single swipe of their tail or a beat of their wings. But she also knew she could not leave it to suffer. Without a second thought, she ran toward the clearing. Her boots sank into the soft ground as she reached the dragon. Its eyes were open now, glowing faintly in the smoke. They were large and intelligent, filled with pain and confusion. The dragon hissed softly, a warning, but it did not move aggressively. Mara crouched down slowly, her hands steady. She spoke in a calm voice even though her heart raced. "I'm here to help. I won't hurt you." She had no idea if the dragon could understand her, but she hoped that her tone alone might soothe it. The dragon flinched as she moved closer, its massive head lowering slightly. Mara saw the damage clearly now. One wing was bent at an impossible angle, cracked bones visible under torn skin. Its tail had a deep gash and its chest heaved with pain. Blood had mixed with dust and leaves, making it hard to see where the injuries began and ended. Mara knew she had to act quickly. She grabbed a sturdy branch and began to carefully prop up the broken wing. She looked for other strong branches to make a temporary splint. She worked carefully, not daring to make sudden movements, because she could feel the dragon's tension and fear. Minutes passed and the dragon's breathing remained heavy. It hissed quietly when she adjusted the splint, but did not lash out. Mara offered water from her canteen, and to her surprise, the dragon sniffed at it and then drank slowly. She let out a small sigh of relief. She then tore strips of cloth from her jacket to bandage smaller cuts and stabilize weaker areas. Every touch was slow, deliberate, and careful. She talked to the dragon softly, telling it that she would help it heal. Though she could not know for certain, she felt the creature listening, understanding her sincerity. The villagers began to inch closer, curiosity overcoming fear. Some whispered warnings to Mara, telling her to be careful. Others shook their heads, thinking she was foolish. Mara ignored them. She knew that if she hesitated now, the dragon could die. She continued her work, moving from one wound to another. At one point, the dragon let out a low, trembling sound. It was almost a cry. Mara froze, feeling her chest tighten. She reached for the creature gently and whispered, "It's okay. I won't let anything happen to you." The dragon's eyes softened, and it lowered its head slightly, letting her touch it. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes to Mara. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in orange and purple. By evening, the dragon was more stable. Its wing was supported, its bleeding slowed, and it could lift its head without crying out. Mara sat back on her heels, exhausted but satisfied. She had done what she could for now. She looked into the dragon's eyes and felt a strange connection. There was intelligence there, awareness, and something else she could not name, a trust forming between them. She knew that tomorrow would bring more work and perhaps even danger, but in that moment she felt a quiet triumph. Night fell and the village quieted. Mara stayed near the dragon, lighting a small fire at a safe distance. She gathered leaves and soft branches for it to rest on. She kept talking to it, recounting stories of the village, of the animals she had healed, of her own life. She spoke softly, hoping that her voice alone might bring comfort. The dragon listened, occasionally moving its head closer, as if trying to catch every word. Mara smiled faintly, feeling hope blossom in her chest. She knew that this dragon, fallen from the sky, had changed her life already. She had rushed into danger, worked with her hands, and faced fear she had never known. And yet she felt no regret, only a deep, urgent sense of purpose. She realized that helping this dragon was not just about saving a creature, but about proving to herself that courage and compassion could matter even in the most impossible situations. The wind whispered through the trees, and the dragon's slow breathing filled the clearing. Mara sat quietly watching it. Stars began to appear in the sky, and the first night of their strange, new friendship began. Mara did not yet know the adventures or dangers that awaited, but she felt ready. She had met something extraordinary and she would not turn away. Tomorrow the healing would continue. Tomorrow perhaps the dragon would open its heart fully to her. But tonight they were here together, connected by trust, fear, and hope. Mara looked at the dragon one last time before closing her eyes. She whispered softly, "I'll take care of you. I promise." The dragon shifted slightly, nuzzling the ground near her hand. Though she did not know if it understood her words, she felt the meaning reach across the gap between human and dragon. And for the first time Mara felt certain that her life, and the dragon's life, would never be the same again. The sun rose slowly over the trees, casting soft golden light on the clearing where Mara and the dragon rested. Mara opened her eyes to the sound of slow, heavy breathing. The dragon was still asleep, its huge chest rising and falling gently. For a moment she forgot the danger, the fear, and the shock of yesterday. She just watched the creature, amazed that something so powerful and beautiful had trusted her enough to let her stay by its side through the night. When the dragon finally opened its eyes, it looked around cautiously. Its wing was still supported by the splint she had made, and every movement seemed painful. Mara sat up and spoke softly, "You're safe. I'm still here." The dragon blinked slowly, its bright eyes studying her. It was as if it was trying to decide if she was truly a friend. Mara didn't move closer, she stayed still, giving it space. She knew trust needed time. She offered water again, holding her canteen forward. The dragon sniffed the air, then leaned forward carefully. It drank a few slow sips. Mara smiled. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. The dragon trusted her enough to drink from her hands. She felt warmth in her chest, a feeling that made her want to cry and laugh at the same time. She began to check the dragon's wounds again. She moved slowly, showing her hands before touching anything. The dragon tensed at first but relaxed as she worked. Its wing was bruised deeply. She added more support to the splint, using vines and strong pieces of bark she collected earlier. She cleaned the cuts along its tail and body, using water and clean cloth. Whenever the dragon groaned softly, Mara whispered soothing words, telling it that it would get better. The villagers came again to watch, but they kept their distance. Some were still afraid. Others seemed amazed. A few even whispered that Mara had some kind of magic, because the dragon had not attacked her. Mara ignored their voices. All her focus was on the dragon. The world felt quiet around them as if nothing else mattered. As the morning passed, Mara decided the dragon needed food. She knew dragons were powerful hunters, but this one was too weak to hunt on its own. She gathered fruits, roots, and some meat from the village. She placed them near the dragon. The dragon sniffed the food but hesitated, looking unsure. Mara gently pushed a piece of meat closer. "You need to eat," she said softly. After a long moment, the dragon opened its mouth and ate. Mara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. The dragon's breathing steadied, and its eyes softened more each time she spoke. It was slowly accepting her. Not fully, not completely, but enough to know she meant no harm. Mara wondered what dragons thought, what they felt. She wondered if they saw humans the way humans saw them, as dangerous legends, unpredictable and frightening. If that was true, then earning this dragon's trust was even more incredible. Mara spent hours talking to it. She told stories about the village, about the animals she had treated, and about her own dreams. She knew the dragon couldn't understand her language perfectly, but it listened. Its eyes followed her, its head moved slightly whenever she said something with emotion. Once, when she laughed softly, the dragon made a low rumble that almost sounded like a response. It made Mara freeze in surprise, then smile brightly. In the afternoon, the dragon tried to move. It pushed its claws against the ground and lifted its head higher. Mara watched carefully. The dragon's body shook with the effort, but it managed to sit up straighter than before. Mara felt proud, as if she was watching a patient finally find strength again. "You're getting better," she whispered. Little by little. But not everything was peaceful. A group of villagers approached with weapons. They stopped some distance away, calling out to Mara. "You should move back," one man shouted. "That thing is dangerous." Mara stood and faced them. "It's hurt. It won't attack. I'm taking care of it." Another villager shook his head. "We don't know what it wants." We don't know why it fell from the sky. Mara glanced back at the dragon, which watched the villagers with wary eyes. She stepped closer to the creature protectively. I won't let anyone harm it, she said firmly. The villagers argued among themselves but eventually left. Still, their fear lingered in the air. The dragon sensed the tension. It lowered its head and let out a soft, tired breath. Mara touched its neck gently. Don't worry, she whispered. I won't let them hurt you. I promise. As the day turned to evening, the dragon began making a strange sound, a soft humming, almost like a song. Mara didn't know if it was pain, fear, or something else. She sat beside it, resting her hand on its scales. I'm here, she said again. Slowly the humming softened. The dragon's breathing calmed. That night, Mara stayed close once more. But something felt different tonight. The dragon wasn't just allowing her near, it was choosing her presence. When she shifted positions, the dragon moved its head closer, as if wanting to stay near her. Mara felt her heart warm with a strange mix of happiness and wonder. She had never imagined she could connect with a dragon like this. She stared at the stars, thinking about how everything in her life had changed in just 2 days. The dragon had fallen from the sky like a miracle, or a warning. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She could no longer see dragons as monsters from stories. She saw them as living beings with feelings, pain, and a need for help just like any creature. She looked at the dragon again. Its eyes were half closed, relaxed, comfortable even. She whispered, We'll get through this. You and me. The dragon made a soft sound, a quiet rumble, almost like agreement. And as the night grew darker, the impossible trust between a human and a dragon continued to grow, slowly, gently, and beautifully. The next morning began with a strange stillness. Mara woke to the sound of birds, but something felt different in the air. The dragon rested beside her, breathing softly, its injuries healing slowly. She checked the bandages and the splint again, relieved to see no new bleeding. The dragon watched her with calm eyes, trusting her more than ever. But even with the peace of early morning, Mara felt a quiet pressure in her chest, a warning she couldn't explain. She stood and looked around the forest. The leaves were still, the wind silent. It was too quiet. Animals usually made noise at this hour, but today there was nothing. The dragon sensed it too. It lifted its head and sniffed the air. Its muscles tensed and a low growl rose from its throat. Mara stepped closer, placing a hand on its warm scales. What is it? She whispered, even though she knew the dragon couldn't tell her with words. The dragon looked toward the village, its eyes narrowing. Something was coming. Mara felt a painful twist in her stomach. She thought of the villagers who had come with weapons the day before. Had they returned? Had they told others? Her heart beat faster as she imagined hunters, soldiers, or worse. She knew humans feared dragons. They would not want one so close to their homes, even an injured one. She hurried to gather her supplies. We need to move, she told the dragon softly. You can't stay here. They might come. The dragon struggled to rise. Its wing was too weak to use, but it could walk slowly with effort. Mara guided it toward a narrow trail that led deeper into the forest, hoping to find a hidden place where it could rest safely. Every slow step the dragon took made her worry. She looked back constantly, expecting to see someone following them. The dragon leaned on trees occasionally, breathing heavily. Mara whispered encouragements, telling it they would be safe if they just kept going. The path led them to a small canyon, hidden between thick trees and tall stones. It was quiet and deep enough to hide the dragon's large body. Mara felt some relief as they reached a shaded corner where the dragon could lie down again. For a while it seemed peaceful. Mara fetched water from a nearby stream and brought more leaves to make a soft place for the dragon to rest. She talked to it softly, telling it about the future she hoped for, a future where it could fly again, where it could leave the village without fear. The dragon listened, blinking slowly, calming down little by little. But the peace did not last long. As noon approached, Mara heard faint noises in the distance. Leaves rustled. Sticks snapped. Voices carried through the trees. She froze. The dragon lifted its head again, growling quietly. Mara peeked out from behind a stone wall of the canyon and saw 3 figures walking through the forest with weapons. They checked the ground carefully, following tracks. They were hunters, experienced ones. Mara had seen them before in the village. Her heart dropped. They were searching for the dragon. She quickly moved back to the dragon and whispered urgently, They're coming. We can't stay here. The dragon tried to stand again but groaned in pain. It could barely move now. The long walk from the clearing had exhausted it. Mara looked at the canyon walls, thinking fast. They had to stay hidden at least until the hunters gave up or left. She placed her hands on the dragon's snout. "Stay still. Stay quiet," she whispered. The dragon nodded slightly, understanding the danger. It lowered its head, pressing its body closer to the ground, trying to look smaller. Mara hid behind its shoulder, heart pounding. The hunter's footsteps grew louder. Mara heard them talking. "I saw the tracks. They're fresh," one said. "That beast must be close," another replied. "If we catch it, we'll be rich." A third voice added, "Be careful. Even injured, a dragon can kill you." Mara clenched her fists. They weren't here to help. They wanted glory, money, and power. They didn't care about the dragon's suffering. She felt anger rise inside her. She would not let them hurt the creature she had fought so hard to save. The hunters moved closer, stepping around trees, checking bushes, following the trail almost perfectly. Mara held her breath. The dragon closed its eyes, trying not to move. One wrong sound could give them away. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind the canyon wall. A hunter turned his head sharply. "Over there," he called. He walked toward the canyon entrance. Mara bit her lip to stop herself from gasping. The dragon tensed under her hand. She whispered, "Please stay calm. Please." The hunter came only a few steps from the entrance. He looked around, scanning the shadows. Mara could see him clearly, his sharp eyes, his tense posture, the weapon in his hand. She prayed the dragon wouldn't make a sound. After a long moment that felt like hours, the hunter frowned and shook his head. "Nothing here." Maybe it changed direction. The others called for him and he turned away. Slowly, the voices faded as the hunters moved deeper into the forest. Mara didn't move until she could no longer hear them at all. Only then did she let out a long, shaky breath. The dragon opened its eyes and looked at her. Mara rested her forehead against its warm scales. "That was too close," she whispered. "We have to be more careful." As evening approached, the forest grew darker, but Mara felt her worry grow stronger. The hunters had found their trail once. They could find it again. The dragon needed a safer place. A more hidden place. She knew she had to lead it somewhere the hunters would never search. But that meant moving deeper into the forest, into unknown territory. She looked at the dragon, which watched her with trusting eyes. She knew they didn't have much time. "We'll move at night," she whispered. "When it's harder for them to track us." The dragon made a soft, tired sound, almost like agreement. As the sun disappeared and the stars appeared, Mara sat beside it, planning their next move. The danger was growing. The hunters would return stronger, louder, and more determined. But Mara would not let them take the dragon. She would protect it no matter what. And in the quiet darkness of the canyon, she understood clearly. Their journey was only beginning and the real danger was still out there, coming closer with every passing hour. The night was cold and the moon shone faintly between the trees. Mara waited until the forest was almost silent before she touched the dragon's shoulder and whispered, "It's time. We have to move." The dragon opened its eyes slowly. It was tired, too tired for a long journey, but it understood the danger chasing them. With great effort it pushed itself up, leaning on the canyon wall. Its damaged wing trembled and its legs shook, but it stood. Mara felt a deep ache in her chest. She wished she could carry the dragon herself, but all she could do was guide it and stay beside it. They began moving through the forest, choosing dark paths covered by thick leaves. Mara stayed close to the dragon's side, sometimes placing her hand on its leg to comfort it. Every step the dragon took made a low rustle on the ground, and Mara kept glancing behind them, afraid the hunters would appear at any second. The forest felt alive with danger. Every sound, the snap of a branch, the hoot of an owl, made her jump. Hours passed slowly. The dragon paused often, struggling to breathe. Mara helped it rest briefly, whispering encouragements every time it looked ready to collapse. She knew they had to reach a deeper part of the forest where large caves were rumored to exist. If she could find one, the dragon could hide safely inside until it regained strength. But by early morning trouble found them first. A horn sounded in the distance, a loud, sharp blast that cut through the forest like a blade. Mara's heart dropped. The hunters were back and this time they were organized. The horn sounded again, closer. The dragon tensed, growling weakly. Mara grabbed its front leg. "We have to hurry," she whispered. "Please, just a little more." They forced themselves forward. Birds flew out of the trees as heavy footsteps echoed behind them. The hunters were moving fast, breaking through branches, shouting commands to each other. Mara heard one of them yell, "Tracks lead this way. Move." Panic rose in her chest. She knew the hunters were too close now. They would reach them soon if she didn't find a way to hide. She scanned the area wildly and spotted a narrow path leading down into a rocky slope. It looked dangerous, but they had no choice. "This way," she said urgently. The dragon followed her slowly, struggling to keep its balance. Stones shifted under its feet, and once it nearly fell. Mara grabbed a vine and pressed it against the dragon's shoulder, guiding its path. They reached the bottom of the slope, where thick bushes grew around a cluster of jagged rocks. It wasn't a perfect hiding place, but it was something. Mara motioned for the dragon to lie down between the rocks. It lowered itself with difficulty, groaning softly. Mara crouched beside it, trying to breathe quietly. She could hear the hunters approaching from above. Their footsteps grew louder and louder until they reached the top of the slope. One hunter shouted, "Careful. The slope is fresh. Something came down here." Another replied, "Good. That means we're close." Mara held her breath. The dragon squeezed its eyes shut, trying not to make a sound. The hunters scanned the area with their torches, moving slowly across the slope. Light flashed across the rocks, reflecting dangerously close to the dragon's pale scales. Mara pressed her hand gently to the dragon's side, silently begging it to stay still. A hunter took a step toward their hiding spot. Mara felt her heart stop. But before he could get closer, another voice called out from behind him, "Tracks go this way." The hunter turned. "You sure?" "Yes. Fresh prints." They ran toward the false direction, their torches bouncing through the trees. Mara let out a shaky breath and rested her head on the dragon's shoulder. They were safe, at least for the moment. But she knew they couldn't stay hidden all day. The hunters would circle back. They always did. The only hope was to reach the caves before the hunters trapped them completely. Mara stood and checked the path ahead. The forest grew darker, thicker, harder to navigate. But deep inside those shadows lay the one place the hunters wouldn't dare enter. "We have to go," she whispered to the dragon. "We're close. I can feel it." The dragon rose again, weaker than before. Its legs shook violently and it struggled to breathe. Mara walked beside it, supporting it however she could. They traveled for hours, moving deeper into the forest than Mara had ever gone in her life. The trees grew enormous, their branches high above like a natural ceiling. Strange sounds echoed around them, calls of unseen creatures, rustling leaves, distant growls. But the hunter's noise faded behind them, slowly swallowed by the forest's vastness. Just when Mara began to fear they were lost, she saw a dark opening in the side of a tall cliff. A cave. A large one. Moss grew around the entrance and cool air drifted out of the shadows. Relief washed over her. "We made it," she whispered. "We actually made it." She guided the dragon inside. The ground was smooth and the space was wide enough for the dragon to lie down comfortably. The air felt safe, still, and quiet. For the first time in days, Mara allowed herself to breathe without fear. She helped the dragon settle on the stone floor, using leaves and cloth to make it comfortable. The dragon rested its head gently beside her feet, exhausted beyond measure. "You're safe now," she whispered. "They won't find you here." But just as she said the words, the sound of someone running echoed faintly from outside the cave. Mara stiffened. She rushed to the entrance and peeked out. One hunter stood in the distance, scanning the trees. Fear surged through her, but then something unexpected happened. A loud roar shook the forest. A massive creature, one larger than the hunters had ever seen, stepped from the shadows, blocking their path. It wasn't a dragon. It was something older, wilder, and far more dangerous. The hunter froze, terrified. The creature roared again, sending birds flying from the trees. The hunter turned and ran as fast as he could. The others followed, shouting in fear. Within seconds they disappeared into the forest, not daring to return. Mara stared in shock. The creature turned slowly toward her, its glowing eyes meeting hers. But it didn't attack. Instead, it lowered its head for a moment, as if acknowledging her, and then vanished into the forest. Mara stepped back inside the cave, trembling with relief. She looked at the dragon, which watched her with tired but grateful eyes. "You're safe," she whispered again. This time for real. The chase was over. The rescue was complete. But Mara knew their story was far from finished. The wind blew hard against the broken valley as Rylan stood beside the weakened white dragon, Mira. She lay on a bed of soft leaves he had placed under her wings. Her body still shook with pain and her breath came in slow, tired waves. But her eyes, bright silver and full of life, watched him with trust. It was trust he had never expected to earn from a dragon, especially one who had fallen from the sky like a wounded star. Rylan checked her side again, gently pressing the clean scales where the infection had been. It was almost gone now. Mira had healed faster than any creature he had ever treated. He knew she was strong enough to fly soon, maybe even today. The thought should have made him happy. But a strange weight sat in his chest every time he imagined her flying away. A soft sound came from her, not a growl, not a cry, something softer. Rylan paused. "Are you hurting?" he asked. Mira shook her head a little. She lifted one wing and brushed it against his arm, a gesture she had learned meant comfort to him. Her touch was warm, smooth, and gentle. "You're getting better fast," he whispered. "You'll be back in the sky soon." She lowered her head, and for the first time he saw sadness in her eyes. A long, deep sadness. Rylan felt it hit him like a quiet shock. He wondered if she feared leaving or if she feared what waited for her beyond the valley. Days passed quietly as the danger moved farther away. The hunters who chased Mira had vanished after the failed ambush. The valley was safe again and the world around them felt peaceful. But inside, Rylan felt the opposite. He knew this peace was only a pause before something big, something painful. One morning, when the sun painted the valley in soft gold, Mira stood on her feet for the first time without shaking. She spread her wings wide and powerful. Rylan stepped back, amazed. She was beautiful and strong again, glowing in the sunlight like snow touched by light. "You can fly," he said softly. She nodded. But she did not fly. She looked at him, steady and calm. Rylan walked closer and placed a hand on her neck. "I'll miss you," he whispered before he could stop himself. Mira leaned her head down until her forehead touched his chest. He felt her warm breath, slow and soft. It was the way she said goodbye. But then her body began to glow. Rylan froze. The light came from her scales, brightening until it wrapped her whole body. The air around her hummed with a strange sound, deep and warm. Rylan stepped back, shocked, but he did not run. He knew she wasn't in danger. Something important was happening. The glow grew brighter. Her body shifted, her wings dissolving into bright threads of white light. Her shape changed, shrinking, folding, bending. The ground trembled softly as the light became almost too bright to look at. Then it faded. Rylan blinked hard, letting his eyes clear. Where the dragon had been now stood a woman. A young woman with long white hair, silver eyes, and a gentle, quiet face. She wore a simple white dress made from light that slowly became real fabric. She looked fragile, but her eyes still held the same deep kindness. "Mira?" Rylan said, hardly able to breathe. She nodded. His heart beat fast. You can become human?" She smiled softly. "Not for long," she said in a voice like calm wind. "Only for moments. Only to say what a dragon's voice cannot." Rylan took a step forward. "Why now?" "Because it is time to leave," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "And because I wanted you to hear my last words with the form your heart understands." His chest tightened. "You don't have to go. You can stay here. We can hide. I can help you." She shook her head. "My time in this world is not long. I have healed, but I must return to my sky. My kind waits for me beyond the mountains." Rylan looked away, unable to stop the pain rising in him. "I don't want you to go." Mira reached out and touched his hand with her human fingers. They were warm, gentle, and real. "You saved me," she whispered. "You cared for me when I fell. You showed me kindness no dragon has known from humans in centuries. Your heart changed my fate." Rylan swallowed hard. He could not speak. Mira leaned in and placed her forehead against his, just as she had in her dragon form. "I wanted to say goodbye like this. To let you know that your kindness will live with me forever, even when I am far away." Her body started glowing again, slowly, softly. The transformation was returning. "No," Rylan breathed. "Please?" She smiled with sad warmth. "Do not cry for me. Look at the sky when you miss me. I will watch over you from there." The light grew around her again. Her hair turned into white sparks. Her body stretched back into the form he knew, the wings, the tail, the shining scales. She rose tall once more, a beautiful white dragon. But her eyes stayed the same. Full of warmth. Full of goodbye. She spread her wings. The wind lifted dust and leaves into swirling circles around them. Rylan stood still, unable to move, unable to speak. Mira lowered her head one last time and pressed her snout gently to his chest. Then she rose. Her wings beat once, twice, and she soared into the sky, glowing against the morning sunlight. Rylan watched until she became a white star in the distance, a star that slowly faded into the horizon. He stood alone in the valley, the wind quiet around him. But something inside him had changed forever. And when he looked at the sky again, he smiled.